Good afternoon, everyone. Happy Friday, February 5th, 2021. A couple of updates and things I wanted to talk through this afternoon with you. First, I heard word that earlier this week, a member of the Amherst community, Frank Brown, passed away. And I want to extend our condolences on behalf of the school system to Frank and his family. Frank participated over the last several years in several different committees, most notably on the Ways and Means Committee for the Amherst School District. Frank was a valued member of that team. He and I had many conversations about things, and I always appreciated that Frank knew how to ask difficult questions, expected us to answer those questions well, and then he provided his support after hearing those answers. And he made us better through his questions and through his process. And I think that the town of Amherst has really lost a dear person to our community. So thoughts to his family and to his neighbors. Next, a few quick updates, and then I'm going to talk about school start times for a bit. So first, just a reminder that February 19th will be an early release for our schools. Details to come from the individual schools about that. The purpose of that is to assist our teachers with transition time between segments. Segment 8 will start after February vacation. That sign-up form is available to you in PowerSchool. We are going to ask families that travel over February vacation to keep your kids home for the week after you return. Work with your individual schools on those plans. Very few families indicated in the survey last week that they're traveling, so work with your individual schools to keep those students home for the week after you travel if it's outside of New England. And our updated school calendar is available on our website. Long story short, we have no more snow days before we have to start making up those days at the end of the year. Although we've had only one actual snow day earlier this week, we used our other days around Thanksgiving and around Christmas to allow for longer breaks at those times. So any further snow days, we'll have to make those up in June, but as of today, our last day of school for the year is June 10th. All right, school start times. I want to start by thanking our community for thoughtful, respectful discourse and input on this topic. I am blown away and impressed that as a community, this topic is, there is not broad consensus, there is no easy or right answer, and yet our community is able to discuss those things respectfully and intelligently, and I'm very impressed by that and happy with that. You need to know that I have read through all of the feedback we've received on the survey last week, all of the feedback that I've received via email and that the boards have received, and I've even been receiving information on social media about this topic. And we've heard all of that, and you need to know that you've been heard and heard well. And so here's what you need to know about what we're going to do moving forward. First, our boards have done an incredible job with this topic. We've been discussing this issue for at least the 3 years that I've been superintendent. We've had several board discussions, we've done several surveys, we've had public hearings, we've had a lot of those things, and yet we're still not at a place of resolution for this topic. And so that tells me, and I believe that's telling our board members, that we're not ready to move forward quite yet. For those of you who are ready to move forward, I know that is the last thing you want to hear because you're ready for this topic to be done, or you agree and feel like we just need to make this decision and move forward. But that's just not quite where we're at, I don't think. And I don't want us to live in a school community where we make decisions to be done with making a decision or just make changes for the sake of making change. I really believe in us doing this together, having the hard conversation and getting to the best possible outcome. So we're going to keep doing that. Here's what I know about this process, and I'm going to list for you the things that I've learned along the way and the things that you folks have provided as feedback for us. So I want to start with the legal requirements that we have as a school system. It's ED 306.18, which requires 990 hours of instructional time for middle and high school students, anyone grade 7 and higher, and 945 hours of instructional time for students below grade 7. In addition, it requires that we build in time for snow days and weather disruptions, and it requires that we don't include things like lunchtime, passing time, and all of that. It does allow for advisory to be included, so Launchpad and advisory at AMS and Sauhegan are included, and even up to 30 minutes of recess are allowed for the elementary grade levels to be included in instructional time, but nothing else is included. And so the legal requirements then take us to all the other logistical issues that play a part in school start and end times. Our teacher contract has some constraints, but our teacher unions are excellent to work with, and they're not going to be standing in the way of us, I don't think. They're really helpful and good partners to us in these decisions. We have bus schedules to think about and how our buses stack, how they work together. No one is interested in raising our taxes because we need a lot more buses because of our school schedules, and so our bus schedules are key. We know the needs of our younger students. We are concerned about their busing, both their end and start times. We don't want them in the dark at bus stops. We've heard that very well. We're concerned about our older kids, their activities after school, their athletics, the fact that they have jobs, the fact that they take care of their younger siblings in the afternoon is a key point of feedback for us, among many others for our older students. We're concerned for our older students and the science and the research behind their sleep patterns. And even though those who are quite younger and even those that are older have different sleep patterns, teenagers specifically need more sleep in the morning to be their best and to do well. And so we know that's important for them as well. And so hearing all of that, I want to speak to what I believe are the community's objectives around school start and end times from everything that I've heard. I believe that we've built consensus for the most part around the school start times for our AMS and Sauhegan students being somewhere around 8:30. Where the issues have been the end time of school. But I think in large measure, what I've heard from you as a community is that you understand that the start times need to be around that 8:30 time frame. 8:45 is a little bit late, 8:15 is a little early, but 8:30 somewhere in that ballpark. I believe that we need to meet or exceed the instructional time of our current schedule. We used to have a 185-day calendar that we used many years ago. The problem with that calendar was it led us deep into June, and that time became ineffective, and so there was a push to move to a 175-day schedule that we have now that lengthened the school day, but shortened the school year, so to speak. But for the most part, people want school to start after Labor Day and end by around June 15th at the absolute latest. No one wants to go to school after June 20th or so. There's a push that we need to add more outdoor and recess time for our elementary students. That's been something that's been brought forward. Nobody wants to add more cost in this discussion by needing more buses. The Sauhegan club time after school is critical to us. Having those at least 30 minutes for Sauhegan clubs to meet before athletics start is critical. And as I mentioned before, the AMS and Sauhegan students being home before their elementary siblings or kids that they babysit for has been helpful. And then just the after-school athletic and activity time for all of our students, elementary, middle, and high school, is important, whether it's a club, an athletic through us, or even outside things like Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, dance, that sort of thing is pretty important. So through all of this process, I've learned that those are the key components of our community's expectations for us as a school system. As a result of that, our school start time discussion is focused around three options that we've looked at in depth. One is the status quo, leaving things as they were pre-COVID, pre this year. And I think for most of our community, again, they believe there needs to be a shift for our secondary students to a start time that's later than what it is now. The end time isn't working. I hear that. The second option is what's on the table, which is the 8:45 to roughly 3:45 schedule for our middle and high school, and the 8 to 3 roughly schedule for our elementary students. And I want to say today that based on all the feedback we have, that that option doesn't have the community support that I think we need to move forward. It just doesn't. And it's largely because of the end time. So I think we need to look at the third option that we've looked at in the past but has been off the table for a little bit, And I'm going to say that that we need to compromise with that position and find the middle ground with a lot of things. So what I'm thinking we need to explore further as a community is having the elementary school start after the high school and middle school like it does now, but shift everything to later in the day. So I think our middle and high school needs to start around 8:15 or so and be done no later than 3 p.m. And I think our elementary schools need to start after that and be done as soon as possible after the middle and high school once there's time for bus routes. From what I gather, that solves and resolves almost all of the issues that have been brought forward over the past year and specifically over the past month in regard to our start and end times. What I'm talking about, I want to be specific so people understand exactly what I'm talking about. There's no assumptions here. What I'm talking about is our school days being slightly shorter and adding 1 week of time to our school year, to going to a 175-day schedule for us moving forward, as opposed to really what is the 170-day schedule we have now. The difference is, in previous years, we couldn't rely upon remote instruction on days when we ran out of snow days. And so in the past, we had to simply add on days at the end of the year. And when we had bad weather, that meant that the school year got extended. We've learned something this year, and that's that we have the ability that once we have snow days that are run out, that we have the ability to have remote days and make sure that we're not going deep into June with our school year. And so I think we need to take advantage of that. The other thing that we need to understand is that this year, our elementary schools have started around 9 o'clock. And although that was something that we put in place temporarily because of COVID, the 9 to 3:15 schedule is largely working for us and working for students. And next year that would be slightly later if this went into effect. So for our elementary schools, roughly 9 to 3:45-ish, 9 to 3:30-ish, we'd have to work to make this work out just right, but it would be slightly later than now, but I think it's close to what we're doing today, and I think it's going to work for us. So this is not done. What we need to do moving forward is continue the process for other major decisions we've made in our community, which is, and what I mean by that is gather input and have dialogue with you as our community. We've missed some of that in the last couple of months, and that's on me. I want you to hear that I have not gotten enough feedback from you as your superintendent, and that's created some difficulty in this process. Well, let's make that right. And so here's what I'm going to ask of you as our community. Continue to come to our board meetings that are scheduled in Amherst and Sauhegan and provide your input about the current schedule that's on the table. I think you have the right as a community to provide that input to our boards. They're interested in hearing it. And also provide input of what I'm describing to you today about a potential to look at that third option that was on the table back in the past of moving everybody a little bit later. I also am going to provide an opportunity to meet with you over Zoom sometime next week. Look for an announcement about that, where I will meet with as many parents that want to discuss this in detail as possible. And I'll hear your feedback. I'll provide even more specifics than I am today, a more fully formulated plan, and I'll gather your feedback at that time. And then on February 18th, the SAU is going to have an additional board meeting for the purpose of discussing only school start and end times. And at that meeting, the SAU board will hear your additional feedback, gather your additional input, and we'll have a discussion about where we go from here. That's the right way for us to make these decisions as a community. And although some of you have shared that you felt like you've not had a voice in this process so far, know that we're not done. Know that we have heard you, I have heard you, our board has heard you, and we're going to get that input before we finalize and make any decision moving forward. Your input, your respectful, intelligent, direct dialogue has greatly influenced this process to the point where we're now relooking at things that were off the table before, but we're investigating compromise positions that help to resolve as many of these issues as is possible. So you've been heard in this process, and we're not done yet gathering input from you, okay? So thank you for listening. Thank you for listening to this. Look for my invitation over the next week to come to a session with me to discuss in more detail. Come to our board meetings that are scheduled to provide their input. and we will talk to you about this as we get to this a resolution to this decision-making process together as a community. Okay? All right. Thank you for your time. Thank you for listening to this. Continue to provide me feedback, asteele@sau39.org. Reach out to me any way you'd like to, and I'll be happy to have a conversation with you. Again, appreciate your time. Have a good afternoon. Have a good weekend. We'll talk to you soon, I'm sure. Bye-bye.